Oh, you are live.
Okay, you want me to start it, Mr. Jim?
Can anybody hear me?
Good evening. Tonight is July 16th, 2020 at 5:30. We are going to start the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Are they meeting as the LPA tonight or just the?
Just PZB.
Okay. Everyone should have an agenda. We're gonna, I called it to order at 5:40. I'm gonna do roll call, and then each one of you will stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me for your oath of office. You can sign it, return them back to me. I'll keep a copy and I'll mail you your copies of your oath. So, William Ford,
Present.
Dennis Lip,
Present.
Standing.
Matthew Otero.
Can we change my last name? My last name isn't spelled incorrectly.
Okay, may I please have the correct spelling?
Yeah, Otero.
Otero. Yes, sir. That will be changed. Mr. O'Neill is out. Mr. Bell
Here, present.
and Ms. Gonzalez as the alternate. And not Mr. Close. Mr. Tickham is here. And Mr. Fleshman
Here.
and your town clerk Birch. So if you all will please stand and raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, protect, and defend
I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and the state
And
and the state
and the charter of the town of Loxahatchee Groves,
And the charter of the
and
town
the
of
Los
Los
Angeles
Angeles.
Rose.
that I am duly qualified to hold office
That I am duly qualified to hold office
under the Constitution of the state
under the Constitution of the state
and the charter of the town of Loxahatchee Groves,
and the charter constitution of Los Angeles Grove.
and that I will well
and that I will well
and faithfully perform the duties
and
Faithfully perform the duties
of board member upon which I am about to enter.
and the board member of Pat Johnson.
Thank you. Now we're at the part of the agenda where we will elect the chairman and vice chairman.
I got Neil's.
Okay, I'll give you yours, Mr. Lip. So we're at the part where we will elect the officers, the chair and the vice chairman amongst yourselves. How it would go if you're nominated and second and voted upon.
I nominate Dennis Litt for chairman.
I accept your nomination.
And it was second by Ford and then Bell.
Oh, yeah, yes, I can say.
We have a first and a second. Ready for a vote? Yay.
Yay.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, it passes 5-0. Mr.
Waving
Lip,
at everything. Huh?
you're not the, you are now the chair. Vice chair nomination?
I'd like to nominate William Ford.
Sure, I'll accept. Well, sorry.
We have a
I'll
second?
Second.
Okay. A motion is on the floor for William Ford to be the vice chair of the PZB board. All of, yay? Any opposed? Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Now we're going to do the approval of the agenda. So if you looked at the agenda, this is how it will be. And may I please have a motion and a second?
I'm sorry? No, I can see everybody better this way.
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
And have a,
I I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passed 5-0. I did not receive any public comment in regards to this meeting, so Jim will start the regular meeting.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the Big Dog Ranch site plan approval, site plan amendment approval. And I'll be making the presentation on this one, but we do have a representative of Big Dog Ranch here to answer any questions, should members of the P&Z have any. The proposed amendment is to address the changing needs of Big Dog Ranch after 3 years of operation. The proposed amendment consists of the elimination of the caretaker house and the addition of a staff support and meeting building and physical therapy addition, and to increase or decrease the square footage in 5 of the existing buildings. The revisions will not increase the approved total square footage of the development, which is 65,804.5 square feet of approved space, and it will not increase the floor area ratio, which is currently at 0.045. The maximum floor area ratio in that district is 0.15. Specific revisions that they're proposing are listed on table 1 on page 5 of the staff report. And you can see that they're relatively minimal. Essentially eliminating one building, adding another building, and making revisions either increase or decrease to 5 of the existing buildings. If you look at exhibit number 2 on page 4, you can see the revisions highlighted in orange and yellow. The yellow buildings are those that are additions, and the orange buildings are those that are expansions or deletions of space in existing buildings. The staff recommendation is on page 6 of the staff report. And as this is a relatively minor amendment, I'm making a presentation and staff's recommending approval. It's not really expanding the site plan over and above the extent of some very minor revisions to existing buildings and the elimination of one building and adding another building, as I mentioned. Staff recommendation is on page 6, which I'll read into the record. Staff finds the proposed site plan amendment as site plan SPA parens 2020-02 consistent with the town's previous site plan approvals. That is resolutions 2015-09, 2017-66, and 2018-07, and the administrative site plan amendment SP parens A 2020-01, and the general structural configuration of the site, and recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Condition number 1, conditions of approval adopted by the town council in resolution 2018-07 on December 4th, 2018, and revised by administrative amendment SP parens A 2020-01 on April 7th, 2020, remain in effect unless replaced or revised by conditions of approval presented herein. Number 2, the conditions of approval herein shall apply to the owner, applicant, and their successors and assigns. Condition 3, development of the site is limited to the uses approved by the town of Lox Groves in Exhibit A, Big Dog Ranch final site plan. The approved final site plan is dated March 21st, 2020. All modifications to the final site plan must be approved by the town council unless the proposed changes are required to meet conditions of approval or are in accordance with the ULDC as determined by the town manager. Number 4, a floodplain development application shall be filed with the town prior to submittal of the initial building permit. And the town consulting engineer recommended an additional approval, which I will read into the record too. I'll summarize it before I read it into the record because it is relatively lengthy. The town engineer wants to make sure that any of the revisions that are made in this site plan that's before you tonight, any of those changes are consistent with previous land development approvals, specifically related to infrastructure permits granted by the town. For example, they want to check to make sure that any of these revisions don't cause any changes to the water management system on the site, drainage plans, things of that nature. So they're one of the proposed condition will add a condition that says, if approved, the site plan needs to be further reviewed by the town consulting engineer to make sure that previous infrastructure permits and approvals are not affected. And if they are, those would have to be revised. So I'll go ahead and read the condition into the record. That would be condition number 5. Prior to filing of a building permit, the site plan dated March 21st, 2020 shall be reviewed by the town's consulting engineer for a determination of adequacy of existing and approved infrastructure to serve approved revisions. If it is determined that infrastructure is not adequate, the associated town land development approval shall be revised to account for necessary infrastructure revisions. So with that addition, staff recommends approval subject to the 5 conditions that I just read into the record. And if there are any specific questions, we do have a representative of Big Dog Ranch here that can answer any questions.
Board members, any comments? Mr. Ford.
I have a question. So it appears that the caretaker's space is being revamped into a non-caretaker kind of meeting area, but it has a full kitchen, a couple bathrooms. Does it have any bedrooms?
No, it does not.
So is anyone living on this property? Okay, and so I see somebody behind you. Maybe
Yeah.
she could address, come up to the podium and talk with us.
Please state your name for the record and come up to the microphone.
Laurie Simmons, president and founder of Big Dog Ranch Rescue.
I didn't recognize you with the dog face.
Yeah.
I know.
There you are.
Yes, there is somebody living on property. It is our staff manager. And she lives currently in the existing house, which is the senior sanctuary for dogs that are too old or have diabetes or blind that can't be adopted. And I do not have the need for the caretaker's house out front. That has been working fine. And what we found the need for is a place for staff lockers, for staff meetings, for staff lunchroom, all of that we don't currently have. We especially needed that at COVID time. So that's the reason for the change.
So I'm looking on these, on the plan here, and I don't quite see it. Unfortunately, Jamie, we don't have any video up here at all, or?
We do not. We do not have the ability to project tonight, so anything you're gonna have to look on printouts.
The caretaker's quarters that were approved prior that you want to change now, they would have added additional living quarters, is that?
Correct,
Okay, so you're reducing the additional living quarters.
correct.
Okay, and then basically from what I can read from what's been proposed, all of the floor plan and the site plan and everything, you're just moving Legos
Moving it
around.
around within the footprint and might also,
You're not asking for any more, you're not asking for any less, you're just,
nope, it's within the same square footage. It just shuffling spaces that I found I need more than others. After,
but no other additional residential living quarters is going to be
no,
planned. Okay, all right, I'm fine.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I just,
Please.
out of curiosity, I just want to know, how many dogs do you currently have on the site?
Probably about 385 dogs, probably 100 plus puppies. So we usually stay at pretty close to capacity.
Where is the house?
Yeah,
I don't see it on the map.
It's senior sanctuary in the very back on the southwest corner.
Okay.
Normally we would have it up there and we
Yeah.
could all point to
It
it.
was an existing house on the property that we just remodeled.
Right.
2,000 square foot. And
Yes.
How many bedrooms?
2,
And bathrooms are 2?
pardon me,
Bathrooms are 2?
bathrooms are 2.
But it's not part of the change.
Well, it was,
I don't know, like, I honestly, I don't see the difference between the proposed site plan or the approved site plan. I don't see it. I've been like with
It's-
my glasses.
it's minor. We moved, the caretaker's house switched to the staff support building. And I moved
In both-
I
I'm sorry.
moved the heartworm pods to different locations,
In both-
basically closer to medical and quarantine.
But in both plans, site map, plans here, I have exactly the same staff support, meeting, building, staff support.
Mm.
Both of them. I don't know if you see that?
They're just reusing the building.
They're tweaking.
Now, if you look at page 4, page 4 should have colors on it. If it was,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Those are where the changes are.
That's what I'm saying. I have the one, I put color on this one because I compare them and
Mhm.
it's exactly the same. This is not showing any changes.
Well, okay, well, that's where the changes are.
The
Bottom
changes
line,
are within the same physical location, that you're just tweaking it a little bit.
Well, I have a question. If, on the staff support building, before on the approved plan, there was 0. And now we have a 3,300 square foot building. Did we use that in an existing footprint of a building that was going to be there?
Because the building's on the original.
Yeah.
And the building's on the addition as the same space, same everything.
Yeah, it's on the same size on both sides and it's the same name even.
Is there a building there currently?
There's no building there. It was going to be the caretakers. And that location was where the caretaker's house was going to be.
There's nothing there right
yeah,
No,
now. Okay, so
not
the
built.
plans are just,
yeah,
they're
I
the same,
think,
just highlighted.
I
You
think,
don't have the original plan.
yeah, that's
You
right,
go through it
exhibit,
all.
yeah,
This is a
exhibit 1,
phased development, so not everything's been built, and then you end up with,
Yeah, but you see.
Oh, my
this is
question,
here.
Mhm.
right, but
It's
they're
exactly
moving
the
it
other one.
around.
It's the
No, it's
same
not,
house.
it's not.
Let's,
there.
let's keep this
Currently, it's
a
not there.
conversation down. The board is not a place where you have a conversation. If you're recognized by the chair, make your point, we move on. If we get into this pitter patter back and forth, we're here until tomorrow morning.
exactly. So
Fair
I'd like to
enough.
finish my point.
Okay.
So
Mr.
my
Shore.
point is, there's 0 approved, 0 square footage on the approved plan. and now we have 3,300 square foot. So that means on the original plan, I don't see where the original spot was that was approved.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying, I don't know. And then if you look on your key coded, it's the same square on both sides. So was the building location always there is my question.
No, no, it was not. The approved plan, I made a mistake. I've got two versions of the proposed plan in there.
Yep.
The caretaker's house, if you look on page 4, there's that,
Ours are attachments. They're not really labeled page 4 and 5, unfortunately, so.
This is my page 4, Jim.
Yeah, mine's blank. I
Yep.
made notes on my page 4.
This one is for.
Yeah, I'm
the
just
map,
pointing out to you that
the map with the yellow and orange on it.
Uh-huh,
Okay,
that's page 4.
yes.
Okay,
Okay, if you look in the northeast corner, there's that building that's sort of like a cross.
uh-huh.
Okay, the house used to be to the left of that on the approved plan. The caretaker's quarters used to be to the left of that.
When you say house, you mean the caretaker's quarters?
Yes,
Correct.
yeah.
So you eliminated it there, and now we're building a new structure of half again the size from 2,100 to 3,300 in a totally different location from the approved plan. Am I being clear on that, or?
That-
The caretaker's
That's true.
location right there.
It went
Here's the-
probably 75 feet to the west,
But it became, again, 1.5 times bigger.
but I took the square footage out of the boarding.
No, my concern is, or my question is, so we're going to approve a new site plan within a bigger building than what we had initially had approved in a totally different location. I don't know, does that, I'm just getting some clarity on that.
Well,
if I may jump in and answer since you were kind of looking at me. As part of P&Z, I don't think we're necessarily building department. We are more of a global department. We're looking at what the floor square footage is, what they're allowed to do on this large piece of property. And what they're doing is they're kind of robbing from Peter to pay Paul to move things around. Do we, as a planning and zoning board, or are we going to devolve into a building department where we're going to micromanage exactly what they're doing? If they're staying within the parameters that they've been approved for, I don't really see necessarily, unless there's something that it impacts for some reason, such as drainage or sewage or some town-specific reason, they have the right to have so many square foot built. If they decide, as they evolve through a phased plan, to move things around, I'm not understanding what the
No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just
The
making sure
minutia
that I'm
is.
clear that if I'm approving a new site plan and I don't have anything to base with the old ones, I want to just make sure my understanding is, that they're not, obviously it's not having, but they're not building a building right next to somebody's property line. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying. to
No,
make the
and I
adjustments
agree
that
with
we're
that, but I mean,
involved
so
in.
Jim, there's no setbacks that are changing. There's no
no.
real scope, I think, that we're supposed to be really looking at. I think this, I'm not even sure why this is before us, to be honest with you, but maybe somebody else can explain that.
Well, it's before you because we have a very limited list of items that can be approved administratively. And this, adding a building, taking a building off and expanding some buildings is not on that list. So that has to go.
You
through-
mean in the building department administratively in a different department?
No, I'm talking about an administrative site plan amendment where staff could approve the site plan amendment if it's a very minor revision. We have a list of things that we can approve administratively. This is not on the list, so it has to go through the full process. Even though this really should be and is a very minor, small amendment, it's not increasing the floor area. It's not increasing the floor area ratio. It's adding some space and taking some space away.
Right.
So that
That's
the
my
total-
understanding of it. And forgive me if I say this wrong and it comes out the wrong way, but in a larger municipality, this would be handled not in front of the planning and zoning board, correct?
If it was in Palm Beach.
That's just sort of my point, is that what we're looking at, unless, Jim, you've misrepresented, and I assume you haven't, that the zero change here, that's really kind of what I'm saying. We're not encroaching on any setbacks. We're not futzing with other stuff. I see this as more of sort of an administrative kind of,
It just would have been helpful if the site plan.
I don't disagree that if we had
Original site
better-
Plan versus the proposed, and
Right.
it would answer the questions for sure.
but all the rules that were in place when they got the prior approval for all the setbacks, all the drainage, all the everything. And the only thing I really was concerned about is we're not increasing any kind of residential, slipping anything in. They're moving some crap around, excuse my language, they're moving some stuff around on a property that's basically been approved for a number of years. This is administrative stuff.
My only question is, since we
Safely
don't,
recognized, you know.
oh, Matt,
Right.
Matt Otero.
Okay.
My only question is, just because we have the same site plan, the caretaker's building, which was 2,100 square feet and some change, which was to the west of the, what is this? The senior?
Yeah,
No,
yeah, the caretaker's building is being eliminated.
it is still there.
Can I come show
On-
you where it used to be?
On-
Jamie, we can't get anything up on these screens?
I'm sorry, we have technical difficulties. I mean, that's why we're
Yeah.
starting to stream.
Normally, we're looking at something where we can all talk
I know,
intelligently. as a
normally,
group.
when COVID's not in play, we're streaming and that conflicts with our AV click share system.
So
and we
this
can't
is
do both. So
supposedly the original.
Streaming
So
is
you're
more
saying
Go
there's a
pro.
building
higher
here?
priority.
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't attach the right one. There was a building right here.
So you say
Here's the
was.
highlighted one.
So that building is gone
That building right there was the caretaker's suite.
and that's gone.
It's-
It's demolished already or
No, it's not gonna be built.
it's not even, it was, oh, it was
These
proposed,
are
it wasn't built.
plans to be built
And
and in
right-
phases,
and
so we
right
don't have
here-
what's actually been built.
Were these three buildings. That little one right there, this one, and this one were all planned to be right there. Medical, my veterinarian wanted the heartworm pods and the well quarantine closer to her clinic. So I took those three that were on the original site plan and went boom, boom, boom. I took the caretaker's suite, eliminated it and did the staff support there. And I took square footage out of here to accommodate that.
Well, that was,
That's,
now it's clear.
it's easier if we had
If I
the,
had a PowerPoint, I could-
it'd be easier if we had that
Okay.
approved. Okay. I just didn't know if there was a building currently there.
Good question.
No, I build is somebody gives me the money or I can earn it and give it myself. Anybody would like to give me the rest of the money, I'll pay it.
All right, do I have a motion to approve or disapprove?
I make a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, Thais.
Sorry, I just have a question. I think that this is a good opportunity to negotiate, quote unquote. I heard that you guys, and please, if you could clarify this for me, did you guys bring 100 dogs from China?
Last year,
Come to the mic, sorry.
Last year, yes, we did, probably closer to 250.
Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I would take this opportunity to negotiate. I think we have so many dogs.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
there are no negotiations with that. So that is a passion of mine. And I take care of probably 80% of the strays in Palm Beach County and all of the hit by cars, which Peggy Adams and no other rescue will. Those die without me. But China is one of my passions. And if you went over there and saw them tortured and beaten and skinned alive, maybe you would think differently.
I've seen that and I don't think different just because I'm more concerned about the dogs that we have here. That's my only point. I'm really concerned about the dogs from, around us and the ones
Mr.
that go to
Chairman,
the kill.
If we could maybe say.
I do
on
more than
target of
anybody in
the
this
P&Z
county to
matters.
save our dogs. But that is not up for discussion. That's my choice.
Yeah, this is we're strictly P and Z. We're not the board. And that's a
I
question for
understand
the
that,
board, so
But I'm
that's
here
a-
to give my opinion. So that was
Well,
my
your
opinion.
opinion's fine,
Okay.
but your opinion on what the matter is what's important, is not your opinion on whether or not the place ought to even exist. From what they set out.
We're about to
as-
approve
as-
a
as
change of
what their
plans for
goals are.
them, right?
Sorry?
We're about to approve a change of plans for them, right? And I understand your frustration, Bill, because I know you're saying this should be administrative, and I agree with that too. But since we're here, I took the opportunity of express my opinion. So I'm done.
Opinions
May I
are expressed.
respond?
Okay, let's just move on. Do you want to make a motion?
We'll move on. I make a motion to approve the change in site plan as proposed by staff.
I second.
So we had a motion by Mr. Ford and approved by Ms. Thais Gonzalez. Is there any more discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Chair Lip,
Yes.
it's the clerk that's speaking.
We don't know who's talking. 'Cause I'm asking for the-
I didn't see any lips.
I'm
moving.
sorry.
Any lips.
Yeah, the next time that we take a vote, if you just like take the corner so I can, and we can do it separate so I can see, because the mask.
Maybe we should
Either.
Yeah, just.
Yeah,
we'll
raise
just do
your
a-
hand.
physical.
We'll raise hands.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
So everybody voted yes on
in
that.
favor.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All righty, thanks for coming.
Okay, let me clear out.
We need to clear the,
Okay,
what?
now we have the Brown Open Storage. Mr. Fleischman, will the applicant present first on this one?
I want to sort of give an opening summary of how these applications fit together and what the approval processes are.
That'll be
And-
fine. Good idea.
Yeah, and then, first of all, I want to apologize on that last item. I did have the wrong existing site plan in, so you could not compare. So that was my fault. I apologize for that.
One more thing like that, Jim.
And I'm out of here, okay. Okay, the Brown Open Storage is actually a combination of several applications related to creating an open storage use in the Land Development Code, assigning that use to a specific parcel, and approving an open storage site plan for that parcel. The applications really have been combined into two groups. The Planning and Zoning Board will be asked to make separate recommendations on each of the two groups. The first group are proposed ULDC, Unified Land Development Code amendments, creating the open storage conditional use and allowing it as a permitted conditional use in the AR zoning district. These amendments are to be approved by the town council by ordinance. Ordinances are required to be approved by two readings of the town council. Has to go to two separate meetings and be approved at first reading and second reading. The second group of applications represents an approval of a specific special exception to assign the open storage conditional use, which was created in the first group of applications, and to approve a site plan for an open storage use on a specific 47-acre property. These proposals are approved by resolution by the town council, which require only one reading. So although these applications were submitted and are being processed at the same time, the approval schedule is a little bit different. As I said, the ordinance, which would create the conditional use and allow it in the AR district, is approved by ordinance, which requires 2 readings. The special exception approval, which would assign the conditional use and approve a site plan, only requires 1 reading. So the combination of the 2 would not be approved until second reading of the ordinance, at which time the second reading of the ordinance would be approved, and the resolution assigning the conditional use to the property would also be approved. So at first reading, the town council would only be considering first reading of the proposed ULDC amendments. That is the creation of the conditional use as a use, and assigning that use as a permitted use in the AR district. I know that's a little confusing, but
It is a little confusing. If you wouldn't mind, Jim.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can short circuit this a little bit. In other words, they're looking for an open storage amendment to the ULDC,
Right.
period. And that opens a lot of can of worms around town. I'll just say the name Seth Breyer. And other people who may be lurking along collecting canal as well.
Yeah, okay, well, that, if the conditional use ULDC amendment is approved as written, Seth Breyer's property would not qualify for it.
He could certainly sue us and come after us for it. Because that's what he had. He had open storage on his property
No,
for trailers, horse trailers from
he
Wellington.
has outdoor storage, and we make the distinction between outdoor storage and open storage. Outdoor storage is allowed on properties in the town, but outdoor storage has to be incidental to the principal use of the property.
Right.
Okay, open storage does not.
It seems like you're mincing words here. Explain to me what open storage is. Give me a definition that's different from incidental use of storing my tractor on my property.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we have a.
As they say in the application, for storage of things like tractors and farm implements. And we all who have tractors and farm implements store those on our property
Yes, but
because it's incidental to my
those-
property.
those are to be used on your property.
Right.
Okay. Open storage is for storage, could be storage of the same types of products or vehicles, but those can be used off-site for business activities or personal use.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
see,
distinction.
that's.
If I could be
where-
recognized, Matt Otero.
Sorry?
Matt Otero, if I could be recognized.
Matt, go ahead.
What about like a landscaper who has multiple equipment? He takes them off his property, makes a living with them, puts them back on his property. Is that incidental? Is that open storage?
That would fall under the definition of open storage. If he has a landscaping business, he has vehicles on his property and he uses those vehicles to conduct a business off-site. That would be open storage. If he used those vehicles only to service the principal use on his property, then that's outdoor storage as currently defined in the town's ULDC. The town does not have any language that would currently permit open storage for storage for use of vehicles off-site.
So how are BRE at the corner of F Road? That would be the northeast corner.
Right.
They have trucks coming out of there, stored there all night.
That's
And how about John Choquette across the street?
that's
He has trucks there and they're out all the time and they come back and they're
That's a use that we identify.
Botanica up on East G. There's a litany of these
Yeah.
people that do open storage because it's their own stuff. It's not like they're in the business of offering open storage.
If you look at those, if you look at our code, those are not permitted uses now.
Well, you know,
Well, Brightview has a special exception. So he has a special exception for landscape maintenance, I believe is what it says.
Brightworks is the only one in town that does.
Yeah, on Okeechobee.
Yes.
So he's under AR, but he has a special exception.
He got, no, he didn't have a special exception. He got a site plan approval by the town council.
are you looking to be recognized, Thais? Okay,
No, I'm agreeing with, like, I know that
okay.
those businesses that, the ones you were mentioning on F Road and those that shouldn't really be in town.
I
But
think
that one that he mentioned is the only one that was voted
Yeah.
for.
Well, if we had code enforcement, that may be able to get that done, but we don't. So, Mr. Ford.
Jim, you're referencing the ULDC, but I noticed that in the packet, or at least maybe you can direct me to it, where it discusses the open, incidental, and all the other storage options for what we're talking about here today. Is it in the packet or? am I-
Yes.
I mean, I see attachment C2, but I don't.
Oh, you don't have page numbers? I think that's what you're looking for.
The open storage text amendment is on pages 8.
No, I'm talking about the current ULDC that you're referencing. That's-
Okay.
Is that in our packet?
Yes, it's in there.
This is the
I'd have to look for a second.
current one.
One with all the highlights on it.
I should have printed this out in advance, huh?
Okay, if you look at page 3, where there's a capital B, reason the present text is invalid or appropriate.
Yeah, my pages are out of order.
So they just call it outdoor storage.
That's, I mean, I got pages.
Yeah. Well, I can read it to you if you want.
Yeah, but just before you read it to me, it was my understanding that not too long ago, the town that is, had passed something that says that if it's not actually in the ULDC, it's not allowed. Is that currently in effect?
Yes.
And how long's that been in effect for?
What,
That
language?
provision?
About a year, I think.
That was part of an amendment of the AR district that occurred, I think, back in 2017 or 2018, that specific language.
So while I'm having trouble flipping through papers, right now, could you just sort of summarize for me, is outdoor storage the way it's being proposed for this property allowed or not allowed?
Well, what's being proposed is termed open storage, and that is not allowed. in town.
Okay. And so before us is what exactly to change the ULDC? Has it been brought before the ULDC committee prior to coming to us?
No,
Any reason that the ULDC wasn't involved before it came to us? Because aren't we supposed to be working in
Well,
concert?
well, yes, but the ULDC works on items that are assigned to it by the town council. This is a privately initiated amendment, and it was not referred to the ULDC committee, or has not been at this point.
We can suggest that to go in front of ULDC though, right? On the ULDC committee. I mean,
I would think so, but Mr. Chairman, maybe we'll dispense with the come back to Jim here and maybe hear from the applicant and get a better handle on what they're proposing and what they want to do for the benefit of our town.
I think that's probably a good idea. The thing that we have to keep in mind as a board, that open storage has been going on in this town for a very long time. But it's been the owner of the company that they've openly storing their stuff to go Botanica, for example. That goes out and does their thing, and they come back and they leave, the same as BRE on F and Okeechobee.
I'm not sure we want to conflate this application with problems that we have already
No,
existing.
the thing is that in my opinion, is this is an open invitation for other open storage things. And the other thing that comes to mind is that we had this sort of imaginary line from East Citrus on F Road to B Road, is that any commercial would be south of Citrus.
Forgive me, so what I was proposing is that we can have these kind of nuts and bolts conversations, but I'd like to hear what the applicants want to present to us, if that's, possible, and then we can have all of
I
those.
understand what you're saying. I'd rather hear Jim
Okay.
through first.
Fair enough. You're the boss.
Can I just say one thing, just to maybe add to the point? Like Bob's Landscaping, he's using it. He's not paying to put his equipment somewhere and then take it off that premises as like this is being introduced. So like an open storage would be like all these landscapers, whatever, like you said, they are using their own equipment. They're not paying to put their equipment on a property.
It wouldn't necessarily be the residents of the town either.
Right, it wouldn't be the residents of the town. It'd be people from all over paying to put equipment on this property and then taking the equipment off for whatever use they want.
And
I think that there's a difference.
Okay, Jim, go ahead.
Okay, well, let me go back to what the definition of outdoor storage is. Outdoor storage is addressed in ULDC section 20-10,
What page are you on, Jim?
page 3.
Page 3, okay,
Bottom where it says staff comment, about halfway through.
okay.
Says, all outdoor storage shall only be permitted when incidental to the use located on the premises or explicitly permitted as a primary use in section 20-015 permitted uses. Now, if you go to 2015, it's not in there. This amendment proposes to put it in. So,
So that section 1 there is all like what would be new to the ULDC.
no, that's in the ULDC now.
Okay,
That's
but
in the
that section
ULDC now,
20
but it-
20-015
Yes,
permitted uses is not?
outdoor storage is not listed in 20
Okay, so no, outdoor storage.
but it says here that outdoor storage is not explicitly permitted in 2015. When right above it, it references that it could be. So there is a link to permitted uses, but it's not addressed.
How did, I forget what the name of the landscape company is, it's right across the street from the Palms West Presbyterian Church. That's a landscape company, and they went through and they got some changes made so they could have their landscape company on Okeechobee. Do you remember that one, Jim?
Oh, yeah, yeah. That-
And they store their landscape trucks and all their stuff there, and they dump off their debris at night, and it miraculously goes someplace else, I
Yep.
suppose.
That was approved by the
And,
town council.
and how did that get approved
Well,
as an outdoor storage facility?
Well, they have a limitation.
It-
I believe it's
it-
20 vehicles or something total,
it got
10.
approved as a landscape maintenance business.
As a landscape business, okay.
Not an outdoor storage.
But they're doing outdoor storage
Well,
as
well, that-
incidental,
You need
incidental
to drill
to
down
the,
on the definitions, and I
That's
think
part
as
of,
these guys would say.
part of the approval of the landscape maintenance business is that they are allowed to have trucks for their business on the property.
Which is incidental to the business that they applied for. What we're talking about is completely, wholly different.
yeah, I know. That's why I'm having heartburn with it. Thais?
Do we know what kind of what are they going to be storing there?
Well,
It's an open storage, but
Well,
we can, we can have the applicant, when he makes his presentation, you can ask him.
well,
those
I'd like to
questions.
see the presentation.
we'll get around to it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One more question. Is Mr. Braswell here?
I don't think he's here.
Okay. I just need to know, to let you guys know that I know somebody by that name personally. I don't have any business with them, but I figure I would disclose that. I don't know if it's the same person or not.
Always a good idea to disclose things like that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Continue, Jim.
Okay, yeah, so this part of the applications is to create the open storage conditional use and identify conditions and circumstances under which that use can be permitted. And the second part of it is that would then become a permitted use subject to the conditional use criteria that is proposed to be adopted. And those criteria start on page 8. There is a set of criteria starting with A and running all the way through N on the next page. And it gets into a list of do's and don'ts, locational criteria, and other requirements such as 24-hour security and no live-ins if they accept RVs as stored vehicles. And
These are the conditions.
some of the key criteria are it's got to be a minimum of 20 acres. It has to be located south of Collecting Canal. And it has to have direct access to a principal arterial or a service level 2 road. Those service levels have just recently been defined and are part of comp plan amendments. Service level 2 road is a letter road that has access to one of Okeechobee or Southern. So if the property has to be located south of Collecting Canal and have access to a service level 2 road, that limits it to C and E road frontage south of Collecting Canal. So that greatly limits the area of potential application of this conditional use. So those are the principal criteria that, like I said, limits it to south of Collecting Canal, has to have frontage essentially on C or E, and it's got to be a minimum of 20 acres.
Okay. Does that complete your part of the presentation, Jim?
Yeah, and then also on page 8, if you look up section 20-15, that's where the principal use would be added to the AR district. And it then becomes a permitted use with special exception category A. That's approval by the town council. And then subject to these criteria that are listed starting on page 8.
Dennis?
Bill?
Jim, so this is a permitted use with special exception category A subject to this section. Why or explain to me the special exception? Why that? Why not just say yes or no?
Well, the article in the ULDC that talks about conditional uses, as each conditional use has its own section, but there's nothing in our ULDC that states how the conditional use has to be approved. So we don't have that many approval processes. So we selected special exception as the manner in which this conditional use would be approved, the process.
So the special exception you're saying is a conditional use.
No, the special exception is an approval process. The conditional use would have to be approved using the special exception process.
Okay, and what's involved with creating a special exception for this or any other special exception?
Well, there's a list of criteria and standards, which we're going to be covering in the next one, because that's part of the approval of the site plan by resolution. That's got a list of all of the special exception approval criteria in it.
I think hearing from the applicant's probably
It's a-
timely.
Yeah. It's essentially a series of questions that the applicant has.
I remember reading them.
Yeah.
There you go.
And a special exception is only involved because the conditional use does not have an approval process.
Okay, Jim,
Yeah.
any other questions from the board, from Mr. Fleischman?
I do not have any at this time, but I will have some.
Yeah. And I'll keep in mind.
Don't put a mask over your face.
Yeah, right.
When we get done, I'd like a recommendation on this, that the ULDC amendments, and then a separate recommendation on essentially on the site plan.
So we're looking for 2 votes.
Yes.
Oh, so we're only discussing the first part then, just on the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
special use.
We don't have to take a vote right now. I mean, whenever you decide that you want to take a vote, I'd like 2 separate votes. You may want to hear from the applicant before you take any votes at all.
Just to drop back to the comp plan and the imaginary line between citrus on F and citrus on B, where commercial is ideally south of that. Now, that's been sort of tampered with the public shopping center, but that still is not all the way to Collecting Canal, as well as the college tampered with that because of their special exception as an educational institution. A lot of those rules didn't apply. But in your estimation, is an open storage company in the business of providing open storage a commercial use?
Well, I would say it's in kind of a gray area because.
Well, let me put it simply like this. Will they be subject to business taxes so that they would pay to the town?
Yes.
They're commercial.
Well, the zoning's still AR, so based off of AR though.
Well, no. If they get a commercial use, they're no longer AR.
Well, this is what he's asking. though.
Yes. Yeah. It's in the AR district.
This will be AR.
Well, so's the college. Thais?
Well, that was one of the questions I had. We are looking to make an exception within the AR, but this, it looks to me like something, not even commercial, but industrial. It's massive for what I can see here. So that's why I can't wait to see the presentation, but yeah,
Well, good times.
I don't think this is for
It's one
AR.
of those things that, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, so we're sort of at that debate right now. And I think industrial use is probably a better explanation of that.
Well, yeah. If you look at a definition of industrial, that would include several things like manufacturing, processing, assembly, and storage is normally included in that definition. So,
Also, it's heavy commercial, right?
They're in the business to make money, commercial.
Yeah.
but it's not being
No,
taxed.
but
heavy.
I'm sorry, Dennis, what I meant to say is heavy commercial.
Okay.
That's the difference between commercial and industrial for my understanding.
Well, yeah, we do have language in the comprehensive plan that says that commercial shall be located south of Tangerine Citrus. That whether or not that falls within that definition, I guess that's up for debate. If you look at the various planning studies or activities that the town has taken, that the study that they did, the pre-incorporation study, has language in there that says non-residential shall be located south of Collecting Canal. And it also has commercial shall be located south of Citrus Tangerine. So there's that area between Citrus Tangerine and Collecting Canal that's covered by that policy in that document that says south of Collecting Canal. So,
Which disturbs me on that, because then all of a sudden the people who've been living on our home sites south of Collecting Canal become marginalized residents of the town. I don't know what that does. I'll recognize you. I don't know what that does to, when somebody's land values go down, and, someone being penalized by having storage implements next door to them that don't exceed 30 feet up in the air. Thais?
No, just a quick, I need clarification on this. Does it say south of Collecting Canal or Citrus, or does it say Southern Boulevard?
No.
Because I believe it's along Southern Boulevard, no?
No, that, and I can't remember the name of that study, but the study that was done pre-incorporation, it was like the precursor to the comprehensive plan, said non-residential south of Collecting Canal.
Non-residential south, no commercial on Southern.
Well, I can't remember whether or not it says that. I mean, it could, but I know it says non-residential south of Collecting Canal.
If I could, Jim, you and I were probably the only ones. I was probably there more than you were at all of these meetings at the grade school and at the churches and various other places that we met. And it certainly wasn't in the minds of us residents to see, because I remember that presentation, the commercial shall be south of Collecting Canal, and it was up to us to draw that line, and that line was Citrus Tangerine. And that's not, in my mind, that's not changed. Now Solar Sport's coming in and they've got their little nursing home activity going there, but they're pushing the envelope. But their biggest problem with that is that is the ambulances will come and go, and it's a food service thing. It's like a big restaurant. It's like a big hotel, so those are fairly intense areas. But when you have a commercial operation such as open storage, and the description that the applicant has put in here, it becomes pretty clear that this is a for-profit operation. If you want to characterize it in different words as industrial, but it's not a grocery store. It's none of the other things that we typically think of, but it is a heavy-duty commercial application. And the folks living across the canal, across Collecting Canal, are going to be impacted by that. And the whole operation, any operation in there that requires 24/7 security guards, for something that's not a store, where something can break in and steal merchandise. So, this is a pretty big operation on 47 acres. And that's a big chunk. And I think that we really need to hash that out very thoroughly before the applicant spends a whole lot more money on something that may never get approved. So I think that's why we really need to, I'd like to hear what he has to say because he came all this way to out here to Lox Groves to make his presentation. I think we ought to hear what he has to say. But I think the big obstacle that we all need to think about here is what is your vision for the town? And if your vision for the town is what is going to be proposed, well, that's your vision for the town. And so if you're finished, Jim?
Yeah.
Well, I ask the applicant, any other questions here from Mr. Ford, Matt?
I just have one thought. If you ever want to see an example of something like this, it would be down by Costco. There's an outdoor storage facility. I think there's RVs, boats. It's on
Oh,
the,
yeah. Mhm.
it's right there.
No, I have a comment to that. If you want to see an example of this, it would be Benoist Farms. Belvedere and Benoist Farms, where the tractor trailers are stacked in there side by side,
Okay.
service bay, and I think 3,000 square foot office.
think that's-
That would
that's-
be more of a description.
I think that's
of what this is
important.
going to look like.
That's important to see it live and see where these things are currently. You know.
Okay, Bill and then Thais.
Jim, is the applicant proposing to relocate an existing business? Because I noticed in the applicant's one. So they have an existing outdoor storage facility and they're proposing to bring it to us, to this Lox Groves area. If I may, I took the liberty of going online and pulling up the existing site of their current facility, that if they're proposing to do basically the same thing, I just think it would be useful if we all were on the same page. So I have plenty of copies here.
Please, thank you.
And I actually have my own.
I
Thank you.
think probably most of us looked it up. Thank you.
Well,
Again, I would like to hear from the applicant because I think that's important. I suspect we're probably, the majority of this board is probably in the same line of logic. Jim, just to clarify, we would need to vote to change the ULDC to allow a business of this nature. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
All right, shall we hear from the applicant?
Yes, please.
First of all, let me just introduce myself. My name is Bill Whiteford. I'm a land planner here in town. I'm former county zoning director. In fact, I'm very familiar with Lox Groves, and before it got incorporated, we did a lot of work out here, obviously, as representatives of the public here in town.
Is your name on any of these documents here?
Yes, Bill Whiteford, I'm the principal of Team Plan. We're a local land planning agency. He's the applicant on behalf of Mr. Braswell, who is Brown
Okay.
Land.
The second packet, I think.
Yes, and,
All right.
and so, I'd like to start with, before you cast judgment, to let me, of course, make a presentation, tell you why we're here, how this came about, and answer, of course, all your questions. Regarding the aerial photographs, in transparency, we sent the same thing to the town as well. So, and we met on that property as well. So, there's no been pulling any punches about exactly what Mr. Braswell's intentions are, even though they're going to be obviously slightly different than what you see on that photograph. I'm familiar with that facility. There is a plan that was never implemented, and it is a little bit different than obviously what's being proposed out here because you have a lot more preserves and
May I interject for a second?
Yeah,
I'm
sure, of
sorry, I
course.
didn't understand. You
Sure.
said there was a plan at the old property that was never implemented?
that's correct.
So if going forward, we make a plan to go forward, what's to stop the plan for not being implemented?
Oh, no, he
here?
fully intends on implementing the plan. Absolutely. There's no question of that. This property, part of the reason it was not implemented is because the property was under contract to be sold to a company that was interested in building an office warehouse on the property. So he did not implement that plan.
That's Duke's, right? Or
Yeah, I
was
think
that
yeah,
the
I
one
think-
that
I
was
think it is.
sold for $6 million in March?
Again, I don't know if that's relevant to the conversation, but I do believe it was Duke. So let me begin. Just unfortunately, we don't have the PowerPoint presentation, which is a lot more clear and obviously packs a little bit of a punch and hopefully would simplify some of
We
the
got
things.
this.
Yeah, it's, it's too bad we don't have it up on the screen, but I'm just going to go through the slides, quickly. We're not going to belabor this to death. They go from, left to right across the top of the page and then the bottom. But as Jim mentioned very clearly, it's a 4-part application. You have the zoning text amendment, the conditional use, special exception, and the site plan approval. And I have to admit, it is a bit convoluted. I don't think that's anybody in this room's fault, certainly not Jim's fault, but the code's written that way. In the county, you're either conditional use or you're a special exception. Here in Lox Groves, you're a conditional use, and then you go through a special exception process. But that's just the way the code's constructed. So you talked earlier about motions and that sort of thing. If we get to that point, I mean, I'd be looking actually for, 4 motions, 1 on each item, but we'll talk about that when we get to that point. Jim gave an overview of the project. It is on, where the property is, on the east side of C Road at tail end. C Road, of course, being a dead end, does not go any further north. The only access to it is via Southern Boulevard, which is actually one of the positives for this type of use at that location. It's adjacent to Collecting Canal Road along its northern boundary. 47 acres. There's only one 5,000 square foot facility proposed in the site, which is an FAR of 0.003. So it's very, very low as to the type of improvements that would be constructed on the property, basically an office and 2 maintenance bays. Maintenance, of course, is very general, very limited. They're not doing heavy duty mechanical work. It's just maintaining the trailers that come and go on the property, primarily tire changes, that type of thing.
Did you say tire change?
Primarily.
Yeah, tire changes, yeah.
So they use the impactors to do that, I would imagine?
On a limited basis, yes. I mean, they do have
There
to use,
was
they
one
have
of
to use
these
tools.
things
They do have to
to,
use, tools, of course, yeah, to make it all, safe and to get the right, the wrenches at the right caliber. The landscaping is almost 10 acres. There's 2.5 acres of wetlands. There's a 4.66 acre preserve area that the applicant has agreed to set aside. It's already on the piece of property. It's at the southeast corner. If you look at the survey, the actually property is composed of 3 individual parcels, 4 wetland or 4 water management tracts, and then the preserve area. It's different owners are involved and that sort of thing, but it's all under one contract. Amenities that are being proposed. If you look on of course, the bright side, there's the equestrian easement that the applicant has put on the property, knowing full well the town was interested in that. A trailhead parking area, again, something that the town was interested in, and I think there might be further discussion about the exact location and design, but it is shown on the plan. There's no nighttime activity. It's a very limited lighting scheme, it's security lighting only. The preserve area I mentioned. We've also agreed to accommodate vehicles for the town. There's some public facility type vehicles that need a place to be stored. Mr. Braswell, who's the applicant, Brown Land Holding, he's more than willing, of course, to accommodate those vehicles. And of course, any vehicle or recreational vehicle, RV, anything of that nature that's owned by a resident of the town. It's certainly open to the town. It's an open to the public facility.
Can I ask a question also?
Yes, sir, of course.
What are the hours of operation? And personal hours of operation, because some storage facilities, people could go in when they're kind of closed up as long as they have a
Yeah.
gate key or something.
No personal. It's all secure. And you talked earlier about security, but it's secure for that reason, for the client's purposes. Not like there's a big theft issue or anything of that nature, but it's secure. You have to go through the security gate and you have to see an individual to get inside the facility. It's no individual key. Hours of operation, I call it normal business hours. Their business hours are a bit earlier. Nature of the business. Some folks need to get to their equipment and to their things that are stored in some of the trailers.
Can you just give me a couple numbers here?
It could be as early as 5 a.m. and
Two,
excuse me,
5 a.m. until?
8 p.m. You look through the backup material. Of course, we have some same information that Jim gave you, the aerial photograph, the site plan, which is a little difficult to see, and I apologize, but it'll come up much better on the screen. We have a tree preservation plan. I think it's very important to point out that we do have out in the room our other experts. We have a tree preservation expert. We have our civil engineer here and our traffic engineer to help answer any questions. Marty Perry is also here to assist with any questions as well. Over 1,000 trees will be preserved on the site, in addition to the 4.66 acre preserve area that's being set aside. There's a landscape plan that took into account some of those issues that were raised regarding buffering and neighbors and that type of thing to be compatible. We tried in all of our earnest to protect adjacent properties. There are residents to the northeast where the largest buffer is provided along the east property line. Further to the east, a little bit south of there, it's a bird. It's owned by a property is owned by a feed and supply company. It's where the antenna is. I think you probably are all familiar with that piece of property. On the next sheet, there's a plan that shows the trailhead parking. This was originally shown on the plan. We took it off, we put it back on because we knew it was going to come up, and we were absolutely more than willing to provide this place, a secure place, a safe place for folks to access the eventual bridge that will go over Collecting Canal. Certainly no disagreement to provide that. We planned it as such with the turning movements. There is room, in fact, on C Road to do the same if that location is preferred by the town. My only comment about if it was relocated to C Road was just make sure that it did not interfere with ingress and egress to this property. We have an illustrative plan which highlights some of these things shown on the next slide. Unfortunately, it does not come out very well at this scale. But it does highlight the fact that there are the preserve area and a couple of wetlands that will be preserved on site also. That's not to mention also the trees that would be preserved through the tree preservation permit. There's a tree relocation, tree removal permit that's required by the town. So there will be, the storage area will weave in and out of all these different things. Photometric plan, as I mentioned, it's really just lighting around the paved portion of the site, which is around the maintenance building, which is in the northwest corner of the site. There's currently 3 driveways to the property. One of those will be closed. The other 2 will be a dedicated in, a dedicated out, and fenced off. But that's where the only outdoor lighting will be, other than security lighting on the remainder of the site. You see an exhibit of our photometric plan detail that we provided. Traffic impact is low. The traffic volumes, the turning movements are shown on the exhibit. We have a peak hour, AM and PM, that did not require any additional work to C Road other than the right turn lane to be constructed, which is enumerated in the next condition. Condition C2, it's spelled out, a turn lane entering the property from Southern Boulevard. We have a paving and grading plan, which is prepared by Caulfield and Wheeler, an infrastructure plan as well. The infrastructure is water and sewer, which will be provided on site. There's a condition of approval regarding a dry hydrant. We've have acknowledgement from Fire Rescue, Palm Beach County, that's satisfactory. I think it's also important to point out, and Jim didn't mention this in his presentation, and I don't know, maybe it was because of some of the comments that were being made, but the recommendation from staff is for approval. We originally, way back when we sat down originally to think about this piece of property, we did hear about SAF. We knew that as an issue. We originally, as part of our due diligence, suggested that perhaps this was outdoor storage, not open storage. And we went through a process of getting a zoning confirmation letter, and the agreement was, no, that's really not what this is. That's different. That's something different, as Jim described it earlier. So we had a pre-application meeting, and we decided that this was the best route to go. This is a different use, open storage, let's call it what it is, and go through this process of inserting it into the code through the process we outlined before, the 4 applications. Those have resulted in our staff recommendation that staff is supporting with the conditions of approval that you see at the end of your report. Jim was kind enough to forward to you also the suggestions that we made for a couple changes, some tweaks, if you don't mind. Some of which, most of which have actually already been agreed to by staff. And, starting with the first condition, and I'm not going to go through these individually because I don't want to, belabor you or bore you, but some of these are still in negotiation with the staff here at the town. But, the paving and grading on the site right now is there's a limited amount of shell rock and milling to be used on an as-needed basis. We're not adverse to that being determined by the town engineer. Condition C3 regarding C Road. We do have Dr. Ortega here who prepared the traffic report. Jim didn't mention this, but the town engineer has agreed to modify that condition of approval and allow the applicant to maintain C Road. And that's more, to keep it more in that rural nature that it currently exists. But he has the equipment and he has agreed to maintain it. Some of the other conditions, again, I mentioned before, the property is actually under separate ownership. There's 3 properties, 3 lots for water management tracts and preserve parcel. County engineer has recommended that we replat the property. There's other instruments that are available that would accomplish the same thing. We would like to recommend a unity of control. We're actually having those discussions with Mr. Keshavar's office, and they're open to discussion about exactly how to plat or not plat the property. Minor conditions. One of these, of course, being that a best management practice plan, of course, which we have a draft of. We would like to subject to that approval of the town engineer versus going back through a special exception process. If possible, certainly the property owner has been asked to give up the 4.66 acre preserve area. We would like to get some credit for that. Not that we're going to need it, but in the event that we do, we'd like to have it in our back pocket for any tree relocation. But we don't think we're going to need it, but we'd like to, just in case, have it in our back pocket. It's a big piece of land to give up without getting something in return. The next couple of conditions are very minor, about allowing a wetland scientist to prepare or help us to prepare an analysis of the wetlands. Our goal would be to use a gentleman by the name of Rick Harmon. He's from WGI. He's very familiar with the property, and he's a very accomplished wetland scientist. And we would like that flexibility of utilizing a wetland scientist to meet that condition of approval. And then, of course, the last condition has to do with screening the property. We have a significant landscape plan, landscape relocation plan. The property will be fenced off, and we would like to provide slats where needed. They're certainly not going to be needed around the entire piece of property. That's many, many linear feet. And we've been talking to Jim about simply requiring that where needed. And if you could see the exhibit, you would see a picture there of a spot where there's a hole maybe in the landscaping where a slats would make sense. And so that concludes my presentation. Again, we have our experts here to answer any questions about any of the details that maybe I didn't mention or any questions that you have. But with that, I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Let's start at the end, Thais.
My question again, I mean, on this picture, it looks like you guys have trucks and trailers here. Is this what you're going to be is this what you're going to have on that site as well? Or what are you guys going to store there?
That's a good question. If you go to the definition section of outdoor storage that's being proposed as a text amendment, there's actually a definition of what outdoor storage would be. And I can read that to you, and I can explain to you that there are trailers, there are flatbeds, there's some equipment, some heavy equipment, mostly some farm implements. He does. Mr. Braswell caters mostly to the agricultural industry. In fact, it's one of his reasons for wanting to relocate here on Southern Boulevard, because that is his principal client for this facility. He does have others throughout the county. This is not his only one. And anything objectionable, he would certainly move to one of those other locations.
And how big is this property that you currently have here?
This is, that one?
Does it say? I don't see it here.
Yeah.
I believe it's 5, right?
I think it's 5, yes.
And the one you're looking at is going to be 47 point.
Well, that's 47 gross. If you once you start taking out the buffers, the wetlands, the preserve area, the water management tracts.
Well, we can say it's going to be 4 times this at least, right?
Yes, it'd be, yes, it'd be bigger than that, yes.
Your current facility, what is that zoned?
His current facility on Benoist Farms Road is located in unincorporated Palm Beach County, and I believe is zoned is in an industrial district.
And you just mentioned that the owner of the business, so are we talking about the owners personally as a family, or are we talking about Brown Land Holdings?
When I say owner, I mean the contract purchaser when I say owner, because his property is under multiple ownerships.
No, I mean the business that's coming in, it's Brown Land Holdings that's going to be buying the property, operating a business here, right?
Correct.
So what other facilities do they have and where are they?
I don't know of all the different locations. I know they're spread out around the county. We did visit another one. Jim was with us on Southern Boulevard, but it was a similar type facility. It was there were no improvements to speak of. It was simply fenced in, screened from view, gated, and very benign in that sense, in that it had trailers on it that were used, again, mostly agricultural, cardboard boxes, that type of thing. And I believe there were also trailers on there that had Christmas ornaments and Christmas lighting and that type of thing stored within them.
And what, I'm not understanding, what's the benefit to the town for having this kind of business in a agricultural residential area?
Well, going back to the open storage versus outdoor storage, our original approach to the town was that this is actually a use that's already allowed in the town. We were simply going to take it from being an accessory use to a permitted use. And you can kind of see, how we could make that argument. But again, we decided not to take that approach after going through the confirmation letter in our pre-application conference and sitting down and deciding that, for one, Mr. Braswell, it's a good location for him and his business in Southern Boulevard. I think that I've explained that. Also, it came up many times during discussion, some of the things that you mentioned earlier about code enforcement and the need for there to be a place locally for folks to store equipment or machinery or recreational vehicles or boats or anything of that nature that the town was having a problem with or wanted to see stored elsewhere.
But I mean, basically, we're an R5 area. Everybody, short of a business can store their stuff on their own property. I'm not where Royal Palm Beach, they have virtually zero lot lines. It makes sense to have a open storage area in that town. Why Lox Groves? Why not somewhere else? Why not unincorporated again?
I will tell you, and I know Mr. Braswell has looked high and low for a piece of property that he thought would suit his needs. It's not easy to come by. The town is, it's to the east, as you know, it's gentrifying. Industrial land like the property is on right now is turning into office warehouse, and folks are being moved out. His particular facility, it serves a need in the community. I mean, it's not one of the things that a community can essentially live without. It's maybe something that isn't always appreciated, but there is a need for his type of use in the area. Yes, ma'am.
Dennis?
Yes, let's let the board finish and then we can come back to you. Matt, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion right now?
Let's just go through the setbacks real quick here, because I can't see on your drawings exactly how wide they are. I see the rear setbacks 1,321 feet. Is that across the whole back of the north side of the property?
You'll have to show me what number you're looking at. That number sounds
I'm
really
sorry.
high.
My packet is page 17,
Jim, do you have?
table 2, compliance with development standards.
I got it. I got a little bit of.
I think it's at table 2.
So would that be this whole?
Yeah, but if I may draw your attention, these are two things. First thing is, are we going to go with it? And the second one would be the site plan.
Well, this is part of the site plan.
Right.
Yes.
Kind of second.
Okay.
We may not get to the
Yeah,
second.
okay.
Page 17.
Yeah, that's how
Okay, so it's
I see the
1,321.
number. I mean, Jim's one out. This is Jim's table. Let's take a look at that.
Rear setback.
Yeah. Jim, I'll have to ask you to clarify
This
this.
25.
I understand that.
So what I mean is, if we handle this first,
Yeah.
we may never get to this. And
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I understand.
otherwise we can sit in the minutia world.
Oh, yeah,
forever.
I think this is Jim took this measurement. This wasn't, It's the measurement to the building, which is in far excess of the minimum setback. I mean, it's many, many times over.
Just Mr. Chairman, for a clarification. Jim, you said we need basically two votes, right? And the first one is being the revision issue and the second one's the site plan. So may I propose to the chairman that maybe we address the first issue and then if need be, get to the second issue?
I think that's an excellent idea, Mr. Ford. That's
Excuse me,
where we're
Mr.
going.
Ford, would you please pull your mic down and use it? We are recording and broadcasting.
I was just inquiring that we have at least a pair of votes, if not maybe more, but the first and foremost is sort of a housekeeping one as to whether or not we're even able to get to the other stuff. So I was just hoping in the air and basically to be expeditious and judicious with our time. I would like to maybe concentrate on the first, and that is the revision to the ULDC to permit this use or not. So I'd like to maybe, if possible, have that discussion, take a vote, and then move on to the next matter of business.
I think that's an appropriate thing, and as chair that I now ask for people to give comments on just on the first thing of whether or not we should change the ULDC to include an open storage as a conditional use. Is that what we're calling it now? A conditional use.
It's a conditional, yes. And again, subject to the conditions that Jim enumerated,
I
which are shown
understand.
in your backup material as well.
I see Mr. Perry standing up.
Yes, that's, Marty wants to make a few comments before you move on.
Yeah, hi, for the record, Marty Perry. The only one that I know here is Mr. Lip, because I've dealt with him previously. You all are new to me. I think this has been an interesting discussion. I mean, I've spent a lot of time out here in Lox Groves over the past 10 years, and I'm familiar with all the issues and the arguments. You know, the reality is, and I know that Dennis has been heavily involved in a lot of these discussions relative to planning efforts, all the school meetings that he talked about. I mean, I attended all those also. The reality is that, you know, the elephant in the room is really the use itself. Forget about all the stuff about conditional use or the special exception. Those are just technical zoning terminology. The question is really whether or not this use is the type of use you'd like, and whether you want to call it an industrial use or a non-residential use, it's irrelevant. I mean, the fact is it's non-residential. You could probably call it industrial if you wanted to. You could call it commercial. I can tell you that I'm heavily engaged with the county relative to landscape services in the Ag Reserve area. We've been going at it now for 3 years down there. The end result is after 3 years of discussion and heated arguments and debates affecting a huge industry, which is basically about $1 billion industry in the county, and there are a few locations for them to go to. The end result is the county has allowed what is basically landscape service, an industrial type use in an AR district. They're allowing it in an AR ag reserve district. Okay. They just call it a conditional use, the same thing that we're talking about here. Those are just zoning technical terms. But the question is the use. And I think the real issue here is that we all know that for years, the discussion has been that south of Collecting Canal is where you're going to talk about non-residential uses. There's been discussion relative to Tangerine and south of Tangerine for commercial. There's no question. I did the Groves Town Center project. I mean, we spent, I don't know how many years working on that before we resolved it. In conjunction, the college was part of that whole negotiation session. But the reality is that, is there a need for this type of use? Now, Dennis mentioned that, you know, we don't have code enforcement. Well, that's true. You're not enforcing codes. It's not that you don't have codes that are being violated. There's been a problem for years, ever since incorporation, relative to violation of codes. When you adopted your ordinance, what you did was you enhanced the violations. The mention was Choquette. I've met with the Choquette family. They asked me, you know, what did I think about it? And I looked at the ordinance and I said, well, you're in violation of the ordinance. You know, you don't conform. They said, well, we've been here for years and we do a lot of great things for the town. And I said, well, that's terrific. You need to go talk to the town council, see if they'll make some changes here. Now that stuff's still open. You've got an item on discussion tonight about things like that. That was part of this planning effort that you recently went through. But, and I can think of a number of other properties that don't conform, that are in violation, have been here for years, okay? The question is, how are you going to deal with those? But then you've got, in addition to that, you've got a bunch of other things. You've got storage systems that are on people's property that really don't belong there, and they're being ignored. And that's fine. I mean, this is your town. It's a small town. I think you need to make your own rules, and you've been doing that. But the question is, are there solutions out there? And this is a possible solution for some of those problems. Is the gentleman who's putting this together, is he going to profit by it? Absolutely. No question about it. Okay, make no bones about that. Does the town need a place to store equipment and things? Absolutely. Okay. Where are they going to find a solution to that? Well, this is one possible one. Are there individual residents of the town that need a solution to where they're going to put things like, their motor homes or whatever, to keep them off the being in violation of their places? That's a possibility also. It's a question of, what do you want to do? Is this an issue that you want to address? And that's really the issue tonight. It's not a question of condition. Do we want to approve a conditional use change in our code? I mean, those are the end products. The question is, do we need this type of use? And that's really the issue before you.
Thank you, Marty. Marty and I go way, way back. Way back. Anyway, so bringing it back to the board. Bill, would you like to start this time?
I do. I do appreciate the comments by Mr. Perry. And I guess absolutely that is the question. Do we want this in our town? I'm struggling with a couple of things. First is the designation. And the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues in our town is revenue. And with the designation as AR, we're not going to capitalize. We're not going to see an increased revenue. That's one concern. The other is on this parcel that he has now, I just did a rough count and roughly 300 vehicles there. I think I'd have a problem telling my neighbors that I could see justification for 4 times that amount of tractor trailers going down C Road. I would have a hard time justifying this to the Congresswoman or Councilwoman Manigla. All the residents that we know that live on the east side of this property. Yes, absolutely. This is a meaningful conversation to a lot of people that this would help. But there's also a lot of people that this would hurt. So I'm struggling with my vote right this minute on that particular issue. I just wanted to bring those points. I guess just with all the things that we do need improvements in this town, I mean, it's not, I'm struggling with it still. And this certainly is a way. C Road's a dead end street. It's going to neighbor the Wawa, the grocery store, everything to the west. I can certainly, feel, a correlation between that use. This takes it all the way to Collecting Canal. I'm with Dennis as far as, really concerned that, we're supposed to represent all of the residents, not just my opinion. And, I'd have a hard time telling a couple of residents on Tangerine that, hey, we need the money. Sorry. They got, they have their stuff there too. So I just wanted those points brought out. I guess that's really just, I'm struggling and I'm going to digest what everybody else has an opinion on this matter.
Matt?
I got a lot of neighbors that are real close to this. I'm really close to this also. 2 thoughts in my head is what is going to happen with this property, especially on Southern. Is it going to be commercial one time? This is commercial. Is it going to be the back of a Home Depot or is it going to be the back of this thing? So those are issues, what I'm thinking, and what's best for the town as far as taxes and what are we doing best for us. The buffer zone was an important issue for me because it matters. If we could actually see it, hear it, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, kind of, sort of, in my thought process, especially being on Southern, because Southern is getting built up. There's already a Publix. There's going to be a Wawa. There's going to be an Aldi's, right? So what's the difference, right? This goes a little closer to home, of course, for me, literally. So I do have to digest those things also. Those are major concerns.
Bill?
I just gonna flat out say, I do not think that this is appropriate at this juncture. I believe that we have a ULDC committee that has been tasked with reviewing things of this nature. I'm not necessarily opposed to outdoor storage per se. I am opposed today for any kind of revision. I would much prefer, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, to have ULDC spend the time and effort to review things of this nature, give us some guidelines, give us some parameters, maybe some physical locations. This particular project in this particular location, there's no way I could get behind. It's way too far removed from Southern. I think it would impact negatively both the physical environment that we have. There's no way that hydraulic lines, oil changes, all kinds of things wouldn't be done on this kind of property and seeping into our groundwater, which most of us are on well water. Again, I think we really should be rather focused on what our task as a planning and zoning board is and not expound into other areas of the town government and issues. And that's what Facebook is for, as far as I'm concerned. But as I understand it, we have a two-part process before us, and that is the first being the revision of the ULDC. I absolutely, given the chance, will make a motion to deny that, and then therefore I believe that we don't need to get to the second part. However, I would give a caveat that I do not have an objection to it being given to the ULDC committee, which is where I think this probably should have originated from. I understand that you probably have done a lot of hard work on this, Jim, but the reality is that I think changing our code for the benefit of our town really should come from the people in the committees of the town, not from a commercial enterprise that's paying freight to basically give, statutory language that we're going to have to live with, which I think Dennis alluded to earlier, potentially would open up a can of worms. Again, I don't think that this physical property, just get off my previous topic, I don't think this is the right property for an outdoor storage. However, I'm not opposed to outdoor storage, provided that, again, we are given as planning and zoning board some guidance from ULDC. So that's my 2 cents. Or 6 cents.
I was previously part of the ULDC committee as well. So I'm very familiar with, what some of the decisions were at that point. I got involved in this town because I want to protect as much as we can. The reason why this person probably cannot find a property like this is because it's 40-some acres. I mean, land is very, there are very few pieces of land that are big like this. I definitely don't see this in the AR zoning. Absolutely not. This, to me, it's a parking lot, commercial, industrial, but if it was up to me, I would say no.
Okay. Yeah, my comments here, and I think the applicant, mentioned this during his presentation. Okay.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. One more thing though, that I don't know if you guys can see this, but right here, there's a residence right there in that corner, which is,
And there's residences to the
South,
south or
yeah.
to the east. No, it's physically, it's not a great property. Again, I'm not going to declare no to outdoor storage. I'm just saying right now, I think we need better direction from other avenues.
A couple of things is that in a broader picture, I'm thinking that Mr. Fleischman does a good job, but Mr. Fleischman is an independent contractor. and he only earns money when applications come before the town. Am I correct, Jamie? I mean, he's not on a salary or retainer with us.
No, he's a contractor and he gets money for doing work for the town as well as cost recovery when doing work on specific projects, which gets
But
billed
there's
back
something
for
that,
the town.
if we had even a part-time town planner that got paid by the town, I think we could, I don't want to use the word avoid, but I think we could temper a lot of these. I'll just use the word that I agree with everyone on the board. That not opposed to outdoor storage, but I'm opposed to outdoor storage this close to Collecting Canal and this close to the neighbors. So I think that's basically it. Because I think if Jim could, when somebody comes in and says, we'd like to do this, you might want to say, how much money are you going to spend just to come to this meeting? And it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that the applicant is spending. I mean, of course, to someone who's, owns a current place, and as they were saying, I think the applicant mentioned this, is the current place is looking to change over to a business with buildings and other things, transition it to another application because of what's going on closer to town. And I think that's the elephant in the room, because we start out with this, and then, okay, we got this. Now we want to turn it into 10 four-story office buildings. And maybe we'll throw in a convenience store and an apartment house. And then it morphs into something else that is not Lox Groves. And so with no further ado, I would appreciate a motion from a member of the committee. Of the board.
I would make a motion that the board denies any revision to ULDC, but I will give it a caveat that we can throw it to.
Let's
keep
just
it
do
simple?
one thing, and if you want to then have another motion, well, let's just do one motion at a time.
My motion is that we deny the application for the revision, or am I stating that right? That we deny any kind of revision at the moment? How do you want to phrase that? Jamie?
Recommend denial of the
of
application.
Of the application
For the.
for revision? Okay, that's fine. And then the rest just falls by the wayside, correct?
Is there a second?
I second.
5 seconds. Anything you want to add to your second? I saw you had your hand up, but I was.
That was actually before that, so
Okay, all right.
I would like to comment on that as well, but no, I second the motion as it is right now.
Okay, so without any more comments from staff or from the applicant, we bring it back to the board for final discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I think I need to defend myself a little bit here.
go ahead.
If that's okay. I took into consideration a lot of different issues and directions from different planning documents and the characteristics of the site and the location when I made my recommendations. And that there were several items that I really looked at. Number one, the need in the town to address current incompatible uses that should result in code violations. We just finished going through the comprehensive plan amendments, which I'm going to discuss very briefly at the end of the meeting here, that were the result of a $40,000 grant from the state. And
You're
in
playing
that,
mess now, Jim. I'm having a tough time hearing you.
oh, okay. And in that, we just finished up a comprehensive plan amendment study financed by $40,000 grant from the state. In that, we identified most, if not all, of the inconsistent, incompatible, essentially illegal uses in town, and really could not come up with too many recommendations as to how to address them. This in my mind is one potential vehicle that the town will have to address some of those illegal uses by allowing vehicles and essentially construction type vehicles to be transferred off those sites, therefore becoming in compliance. Also, the town utilities department, which is located next to Palms West Plaza on D Road in Southern, the town really is looking for a place to move that so that the town could take advantage of the value of that property, possibly selling it or doing another use. I spoke with these guys and they're willing to make.
And just for clarification, you're talking about the water control district?
Yes, yeah. They're willing to make some accommodations to at least temporarily move those vehicles over to this site. Taxes, increase in tax revenues. This 47-acre parcel, the applicant, in his justification statement, he said there's going to be an increase in taxes. So on that basis, I said, well, I'm going to try to find out what this property is currently paying in taxes to the town. $57 a year for this 47 acres comes to the town in ad valorem taxes. Now, if I talked to the Palm Beach County appraiser who appraises non-residential properties in Loxahatchee Groves. I said, how do you determine the value of open storage facilities? And she said, well, I usually appraise them at between $4 and $8 per square foot of land. Okay, now on this property, looking at the usable open storage area that's identified on the site plan, it's about 28 acres. So I made the assumption that she would appraise the property at its lowest value for in the range that she normally appraises these kinds of uses, $4 a square foot, and that came up to almost $14,000 a year that would be generated to the town via ad valorem taxes. And if she went up to the upper end of that range, you're talking $26,000, $28,000 a year. So, and they have a proposed equestrian trail on the northern end, which would provide another link of the equestrian trail that's being started over on Grovestown Center to the east. They can provide a connection there. That's another benefit to the town. And they have a 100-foot conservation easement buffer on the north end, and expansive buffer areas surrounding the property in the areas where they abut the AR district. So I just wanted to.
You said something earlier. I just need to clarify. Back from all my time spending it on the county's planning board, aren't there 43,560 square feet in 1 acre?
Yes.
And you said you were going to get $2 per acre?
No.
That's $87,000 for just 1 acre.
No, I didn't say.
All right, I must
said
have misunderstood you.
$4 per square foot. I thought.
$4 a square foot.
$4 per square foot.
Of the open store. Well, I made the assumption that the $4 a square foot would not apply to the full 47 acres. Just
So if it applied to 1 acre,
Times that by 40,000 times.
Can I jump in for a second?
Okay, well, that's the tax.
43,000.
That's the taxable value.
Square feet.
Can I just jump in real quick and maybe short circuit this a little bit? We have a specific motion on the floor. Jim, are you basically saying that the town of Loxahatchee Groves should transfer its allegiance to its idea of an agricultural, residential, rural town in light of tax dollars? Is that basically the premise from what I'm hearing is, hey, they're not paying us any money. Let's take this nice 50 acres of relatively virgin land that does not have gasoline, oil, hydraulic fluid, and God knows what other contaminants being drained into our aquifer. in exchange for a whole bunch of money, even though we're already basically doing that down the Southern Boulevard.
That was one of my several considerations. Yes. Now, I think that we have in the conditions of approval in the site plan, I think we have conditions in the site plan that address the issues you're talking about.
I have a question. I've been waiting.
Thank you, Thais.
Jim, I kind of want to, I want to clarify what you said. What I did understand was that you said that in order to make non-compliant businesses right now compliant, we need to change the ULDC. That's what I kind of, to address all those problems that we have if we change the ULDC so they can become.
That's one alternative. I think in order to address all of these non-compliant uses, we have to have a whole shopping cart of methodologies that we can apply depending upon the individual property owner and his willingness to go with one option or another.
Well, I disagree with that. I think that, those businesses need to, code enforcement need to go there and make sure that they do the right thing. I don't think that we changing the ULDC for them to become.
Certainly one option. Dennis, what you were looking at was the taxable value. I was looking at the ad valorem taxes. You take the $4 a square foot, that gives you your taxable value, and then you apply 3 mils to that. That brings it down.
Okay, all right.
I did second the motion, right?
Yes.
Could we
Thank you.
call for a vote?
I think in committee parlance, that's call the question. Okay, we have a motion to call the question. Everybody who in favor of calling the question, raise your hand. That means now we're going to vote. Okay, now we're going to hold a vote. All those in favor, if you please, Tisha, could you restate the motion for us?
The motion was made by,
Mr. Perry, I see you hovering. Did you need to say something or do you need to go to the bathroom?
You spend an awful lot of time in this and I don't want to drag it out any.
Okay.
It drives me nuts, this mask, and I'm far enough away from you. The only comment that I want to make is that, we wrestle with these types of issues every time I've come out here. This is not unfamiliar and I don't have any bad feelings one way or the other. Y'all are supposed to make these kind of decisions. But the thing that strikes me is that there is a need for this. 2 or 3 of you have recognized there's a need for this type of storage out here. The reality is where are you going to put it? There is no place to put it. You need to protect everything, frankly, between Collecting Canal and Okeechobee, and frankly, in my opinion, you need to protect everything between Collecting Canal and maybe about 600 to 1,000 feet south of Okeechobee. And there are ways to do that. This town can protect its agricultural nature and the 5-acre homes and 10-acre lots, et cetera. But it's really going to take some planning. And I know you, Dennis, have thought about this, and it's a problem that keeps on going, but you're just kicking the can down the road because there are no other places to put something like this. And you do have a major problem in terms of code compliance. And that's my only comment. And
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
Again, you're saying that there's a need for this kind of storage.
No, I believe there is a need, and I think 2 or 3 of you have indicated that you agree that there's a need for it.
Again, what are you going to be storing there? What are you going to store there?
The reality is that there are people out here that have got motor homes, things like that are illegally parked on their homes. They've got equipment that are illegally parked in their homes. You got businesses out here that are operating illegally. You're ignoring them all right now, and that's fine. And it's easy for you to sit there and say, ma'am, and I don't mean this as a criticism of you, well, we ought to enforce those rules. Well, the reality, you're going to have a war out here if you try to enforce all those rules. You need to find some way to help those people solve their own problems. You can't just say you can't do that anymore. Where are they going to go?
Well, I disagree with you because the people on F Road, they're not going to rent your storage.
Well, they
The
may
people
not.
around
They
here
may
are not
not.
going to.
They may
So you're
not
going to be
all.
storing stuff for people. People are going to be able to rent a space there to store an RV or a boat or whatever.
They may not all do that, but some of them may. And that you're offering an opportunity to those people that want to comply. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Letitia, could you read the motion, please?
the motion was made by Mr. Ford, second by Ms. Gonzalez, to deny the application for the changes of the ULDC.
Okay. All right, if we could have a show of hands of all those who are in favor for the denial of the application.
The denial passes 5-0.
So the denial passes.
Mr. Chairman, this, Todd McClendon had a.
That's the
a
same
copy
thing.
of the areas that I think you already have. He asked that they be passed out, so.
Do we want to include these as
Oh,
as part of the
No.
record? Is it the same thing?
Probably, if it's
Yeah,
off the
it is.
Papa site or
But I
Google
just wanna make
Maps
sure that
or
the record reflects that
any
he
satellite.
gave you his-
Let the record reflect that Mr. Fleischman handed us the same photograph that Mr. Ford brought, but I would like to have a motion to include these as part of the record.
I'll make the motion to
Okay, moves.
include that into the record.
Mr. Ford, seconds.
Sure.
All those in favor, please raise your hands. So this then becomes part of the official record of this meeting.
I have a question regarding that. I'm sorry, Jim, but why didn't you show us that before we voted?
Because you already had it.
Okay.
Mr. Ford, he just is covering his bases. Okay. All right, Jim, what's
Mr.
next
Chairman,
on the
can we
agenda?
take a 5-minute restroom break and before we get to, I understand there's going to be a presentation,
Well, it's.
not even 5 minutes?
No.
No, not
Okay,
even,
no
not even
problem.
5 minutes. What I wanted to mention is that this board also sits as the local planning agency for
Right.
comprehensive plan amendments. And the comprehensive plan amendments that we produced based on the grant that we got from the state, it has to go to the council before August 15th. And so in order to meet the advertising requirements, it needs a recommendation from this body, which I would like to have that meeting on July 30th. And hopefully all of you can make that date at the same time.
Yeah, I can't. I can't.
Yeah,
make
no,
that.
that's right, you can't.
That 2 weeks from tonight.
I'll be able to be there.
Theoretically, I'd already emailed my response.
Right, okay. And I gave you a handout.
Just it would have to be 6:30, 5:30 definitely not a
Is it 6:30?
possibly, yes. Sorry for the delay, but it's something that has to.
You can catch up when you get here.
And in your agenda pack, there was a summary of those amendments, but it did not have all of the backup that explained how we got to those amendments. And I have copies of those that I'd like to give you so you can take with you and read those before the next meeting.
Thank you, Jim.
He's assigning you homework.
And also just for your basic knowledge, we did prepare up-to-date future land use and zoning maps as part of that grant, which I have.
Cool.
also.
No, that's good.
Most people are very interested.
Just the one where they're stealing roads. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
There's two here.
This is the first time that these have been revised since 2006.
Wow.
And so I'm going to try to put together the meeting for the 30th at 6:30. Is that okay?
How long do you think this meeting's going to be, Jim?
Well, it all depends on how much discussion we have. I mean, if it ended up like.
I'll bring
discussion
beer
tonight,
and then we can be
Yeah.
done real quick.
And if you have questions that you want answers for, let me know ahead of time. I can prepare some answers and bring them.
What, you're just giving us this map, but you're not giving us more homework? You don't have,
The whole the whole thing.
Oh, I don't know, all I got was the map. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Oh, this is the one.
You took, thank you, sorry. Glad I asked.
Well, I guess we know where
You
you
made light
stand.
reading.
Okay, without any further ado, Mr.
Mr.
Titko.
Chair. There is one other piece we need to, while you're still in session, if we can swear in your
Need the
later arriving member, just so he's official for the next time around.
picture, because I can't remember it, sorry.
Say that again, I'm sorry, you're.
You're swear. we're
We need to
swearing
swear in Mr. O'Neill. He wasn't here when you were all sworn in, so. Lakeisha, are you going to do the honors?
Yes, sir, I can. I need that, sorry,
Oh.
Mr. O'Neill.
Actually, why don't we just let him read it?
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
Why'd you just read it and sign it and hand it to her?
Mr. Ford, what would we do
I'm
without your
telling you, I'm
guidance?
sorry. I got 3 young kids and all about expedience.
For the record, we're adding the swearing in of Mr. O'Neill, who was not here when we swore in the rest of you. Thank you.
Okay. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state and the charter of the town of Lox Groves, that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state and the charter of the town of Lox Groves, and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties board member upon which I am now about to enter.
Thank you.
Okay, very
Good
good.
job.
Congratulations.
I can read.
Sign and hand us the keys and you're good.
Okay, without further ado, this meeting is adjourned. Well, I passed that down. You're good. There we go. Adjourned. Okay, thank
Can I
you.
ask
You want to do that for a whole
Send-
Ah, dude, I tell you, I've had a bunch of coffee and iced tea before that, and I was in need.